Have you ever felt like you're trapped in an endless cycle, chasing things that promise happiness but never quite deliver? You work harder, you buy more, you experience more pleasures, and yet something inside remains unsatisfied. What if I told you that every single person you know, including yourself, has been living under a profound misunderstanding about what actually makes us happy? And more importantly, what if there's a way to see through this illusion completely? In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to walk you through one of the most transformative teachings from Buddhist philosophy that literally changed the trajectory of thousands of lives. This isn't about religion or belief systems. This is about understanding the actual mechanics of suffering and how to genuinely free yourself from it. Stay with me as we explore the deeper truth about pleasure, disease, and what genuine health actually means. Most of us have been taught that pleasure is something to be pursued, that satisfaction comes from experiencing good things, and that happiness is something we can build by accumulating the right combinations of experiences, possessions, and relationships. This seems obvious, doesn't it? But what the ancient Buddhist philosophers discovered was that this entire framework is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how human experience actually works. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a person who has spent their entire life in poverty and hardship. They've never had enough to eat. They've never experienced comfort. Then one day their circumstances change dramatically. They gain wealth, access to beautiful things, delicious food, and pleasant sensations. For a while, this person experiences what seems like pure joy. They're happy because they finally have what they've been missing. But here's where it gets interesting. After a few months or years, something shifts. The excitement fades. The same experiences that once brought them intense pleasure become ordinary. They find themselves needing more, better, different experiences to feel that same sense of satisfaction. This isn't a failure on the person's part. This is actually how the human system is designed to work. But most of us never recognize this pattern, so we keep trying harder and harder, thinking that if we just get the right thing or achieve the right accomplishment, we'll finally feel complete. We don't realize that we're chasing something that's structurally impossible to achieve. The teaching explains this through a concept that's actually quite brilliant. Imagine someone who has never seen colors before. Someone who was born blind cannot perceive red, blue, or yellow. Now imagine that a sighted person tries to explain how beautiful the color white is, how beautiful a white garment is, how pure and clean it appears. The blind person hears this description and becomes fascinated. They develop a desire for this white garment, even though they have no direct experience of what white actually looks like. They've never seen it, but now they want it intensely based on someone else's description. This is what happens with pleasure in our lives. We're told that certain experiences are valuable, that certain acquisitions will make us happy, that certain achievements will complete us. We accept these descriptions without actually examining our direct experience. We chase white garments we've never truly seen. And when we finally get what we've been pursuing, we discover that the reality doesn't match the promise. The pleasure we experience is based on our previous suffering or deprivation, not on anything inherently satisfying about the thing itself. There's another way the teaching frames this problem that's even more illuminating. It uses the metaphor of a disease, but not just any disease. It's talking about a condition that's so universal, so normalized, that we don't even recognize it as a problem. Everyone you see is suffering from it. You're suffering from it right now, and you probably don't even realize it. Consider the human body. From the moment of conception, from the very day you were born, this body has been subject to illness. There's not a single person alive whose body isn't vulnerable to disease. The body is like a ground that naturally cultivates sickness, pain, and decay. We accept this as normal because it's universal, but the teaching asks us to really look at what this means. Now, here's the clever part that most people miss. Someone who has a deep skin condition, a serious rash or wound, will naturally scratch at it because scratching provides temporary relief. When the wound is inflamed and sensitive, scratching creates a sensation that feels better than the pain of the inflammation itself. So the person scratches more and more, not realizing that each time they scratch, they're making the condition worse. The wound becomes infected, it spreads, it creates more problems, but in the moment the scratching feels good. This is exactly what we do with pleasure. We have this fundamental sense of dis-ease in our existence. We have hunger, thirst, restlessness, dissatisfaction. And we've learned that certain experiences provide temporary relief from this dis-ease. We eat and the hunger disappears. We engage in entertaining activities and the boredom fades. We pursue romantic relationships and the loneliness eases. But we're not actually healing the underlying condition. We're just scratching at it, and in the process, we're making it worse. The teaching explains this by describing the human body as a nest where diseases naturally grow. It's not a failure of the body. It's not that your body is defective or that you're doing something wrong. It's that the nature of the physical form is to be subject to constant vulnerability. You've been sick since the day you were born. Before you were even born, while you were in the womb, sickness was already present. The body is designed in such a way that it naturally decays, that it's naturally prone to pain and discomfort. But here's what's most interesting about this understanding. A person who truly grasps this doesn't become depressed or nihilistic. Instead, they become free from a particular kind of delusion. They stop expecting the body to be healthy. They stop expecting pleasure to be lasting. They stop thinking that accumulating the right experiences will somehow solve the fundamental problem. And this shift in understanding changes everything about how they live. There's a verse that exists in Buddhist philosophy that says, "Health is the greatest gain. Nirvana is the greatest happiness." But this verse has been so misinterpreted over the centuries that most people who read it completely miss what it actually means. Many people have taken this to mean physical health of the body, thinking the teaching is saying that if you just maintain good health, you'll be happy. Some have even built temples and hospitals based on this misunderstanding, thinking they're promoting health as the path to happiness. But this misses the entire point. The teaching isn't talking about the health of the physical body at all. It's talking about the health of the mind. It's talking about freedom from the mental patterns and misunderstandings that cause suffering. When the verse says health is the greatest gain, it means freedom from the disease of ignorance. It means clarity about how things actually work. Let me explain this through another metaphor because this is crucial to understand. Imagine a person who is physically disabled, who can barely move, whose body is deteriorating. A doctor works for hours, maybe even for days, performing surgery and treatment to help this person see again or to restore their function. It's exhausting work. The doctor is completely focused, completely dedicated because the stakes are high. The person undergoing the treatment might feel pain during the process. They might not feel relief immediately. But once the treatment is complete, once the person can see again or move again, everything changes. Suddenly, the temporary discomfort of the treatment reveals itself to have been worthwhile. The person can now perceive things they couldn't before. They can now function in ways that were previously impossible. And here's the key part. They would never go back to scratching at their wounds with firecrackers just to feel a momentary sensation of relief. They understand now that what felt like relief was actually making the problem worse. This is what the teaching is pointing to when it talks about health. It's not the temporary absence of pain. It's not the presence of pleasant sensations. It's the fundamental clarity that comes from understanding how things actually work. Once you have this clarity, you're not interested in going back to the patterns that create suffering, even though those patterns might feel like relief in the moment. The metaphor goes even deeper. It describes a blind person from birth who has never experienced color, who has never seen anything visually. People with sight describe to this person how beautiful white is, how pure and clean white garments are. Based on these descriptions, this blind person develops a craving for white clothing, even though they have no actual experience of what white looks like. They've never seen it. When someone comes along and tricks them, giving them a black garment stained with oil and dirt, telling them it's white, the blind person accepts it and wears it happily, thinking they finally have what they've been seeking. This is how most of us live. We pursue things based on descriptions we've heard, based on what other people have told us is valuable, without ever directly examining our own experience. We wear black garments thinking they're white because we're operating on second-hand information. We don't have the eye to see directly. And when life finally reveals to us that what we were chasing wasn't what we thought it was, many of us just feel tricked and bitter, rather than realizing we were working from a false premise the entire time. Now let's talk about the actual mechanics of how this system works, because understanding the mechanism is what gives you the power to step out of it. The teaching identifies that there's a fundamental pattern underlying all suffering, and this pattern operates through what it calls the aggregates of experience. Every moment of your experience is composed of several elements working together. First, there's form, the physical sensation. When you see something, when you touch something, you're receiving form. Then there's the feeling tone, whether that form feels pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Then there's perception, your recognition and labeling of what's happening. Then there are the mental formations, all the thoughts and reactions that arise around the experience. And finally, there's consciousness itself, the bare awareness that's registering all of this. The problem begins the moment there's contact between your senses and an object. As soon as you see something, hear something, smell something, or experience a physical sensation, there's an automatic process that kicks in. Your mind assesses it. Is this pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? This assessment happens so quickly that most people never notice it's happening. It's pre-conscious. If the assessment is that something is pleasant, craving immediately arises. You want more of it. If it's unpleasant, aversion arises. You want to push it away. If it's neutral, indifference arises. But here's where it gets crucial. This craving or aversion doesn't just sit there. It immediately becomes a driver. You start seeking experiences that will satisfy the craving or eliminate the aversion. Now, if you could just experience something pleasant and be satisfied, that would be one thing. But remember what we talked about earlier. The pleasant sensation is only pleasant because of the context you're coming from. If you're deprived, then getting something feels good. But as that deprivation disappears, what felt good becomes ordinary. You need more or different or better. The craving doesn't get satisfied, it just transforms. This is where attachment comes in. Craving turns into attachment. You don't just want the pleasant thing anymore. You're now bound to it. Your sense of who you are and whether you're okay gets tied up with whether you have that thing. And because everything changes, because nothing is permanent, your attachment is constantly being threatened. You're in a constant state of low-level anxiety about whether you'll get what you want or whether you'll lose what you have. And here's the part that really completes the circle. Because of this attachment, you keep creating patterns of behavior designed to secure the thing you're attached to. You keep coming back to the behavior that brings temporary relief. A person might recognize this in their own life. They might notice that they eat when they're not hungry, that they engage in entertainment when they're not actually interested, that they spend money on things they don't need. They might do all this while simultaneously feeling guilty or ashamed about it, without realizing that the guilt and shame are just more sensations they're trying to soothe by repeating the pattern again. The teaching calls this the endless cycle of becoming. You're constantly becoming someone new, constantly creating new versions of yourself through your choices, but you're doing it unconsciously, driven by these automatic patterns of craving and aversion. And you're doing it under the illusion that somehow, eventually, you'll find the right combination of experiences that will satisfy you permanently. You won't. That's not how the system works. Now here's where the teaching shifts from problem to solution, and this is where things start to get genuinely hopeful. The solution isn't to try harder to get what you want. The solution isn't to become a better person or to achieve more. The solution is a shift in how you see. The teaching describes this as developing an eye that can perceive directly. Remember the blind person from the teaching. The reason that person was so vulnerable to being tricked is because they didn't have the ability to see directly. They were dependent on descriptions, on what other people told them. But imagine that person received treatment, underwent a process of healing, and suddenly gained the ability to see. Everything would change. They wouldn't need anyone to tell them what's white and what's black anymore. They could perceive it directly. This is what genuine understanding is. It's not intellectual knowledge. It's not information you've learned. It's the capacity to perceive something directly for yourself. And the teaching suggests that every human being has the potential to develop this capacity. You can train it, you can cultivate it, but it requires a particular kind of effort. The effort involved is to look directly at your own experience, not based on what you've been told, not based on theory, but based on what you can actually observe about yourself. You start to notice the patterns. You start to see how craving arises. You notice how pleasure appears and disappears. You observe how you cling to things. You watch how that clinging creates suffering. You see how letting go of the clinging brings relief. This isn't done through harsh rejection or through condemning yourself for your desires. It's done through observation. It's done through attention. It's done through a kind of gentle witnessing of your own experience. As you develop this capacity to observe without judgment, something remarkable starts to happen. You start to lose interest in the patterns that were previously driving you, not because you're forcing yourself to lose interest, but because you're seeing them clearly for what they are. The teaching describes this final understanding as having multiple components that all need to be recognized. First, there's the recognition of the arising, how desires come into being. Second, there's the recognition of the passing away, how they naturally fade if you don't feed them. Third, there's the recognition of the inspiration, the temporary relief that craving seems to offer. Fourth, there's the recognition of the problem, the suffering that craving ultimately causes. And fifth, there's the recognition of the way out, the possibility of freedom from the pattern entirely. All five of these recognitions need to become part of your direct experience. They can't be just intellectual understanding. They have to be lived. And the teaching suggests that this is a training, a practice, something you cultivate over time. It's not something that happens all at once. But the good news is that every single moment offers you an opportunity to practice. Every time you face a desire, every time you're about to reach for something to soothe yourself, every time you notice yourself automatically reacting, that's an opportunity to develop this eye of understanding. The final teaching suggests that as you develop this understanding through practice, through meditation, through the deliberate cultivation of mindfulness and awareness, something begins to shift in your relationship to your life. You stop being so desperate. You stop being so driven. You stop seeing every moment as a problem that needs to be solved. Instead, you start to experience a kind of ease, a kind of freedom from the constant pressure of craving and aversion. This is what the teaching calls true health. Not the absence of physical sensation, not the presence of comfort, but the freedom from the mental patterns that were creating suffering. And it suggests that this freedom is available to you right now if you're willing to look directly at your own experience and develop the capacity to see it clearly. The journey begins not with achieving anything, but with understanding what you've already been chasing. The journey begins with seeing through the illusion.